Okay, so then here we have the diencephalon. Now let's go below the or actually inferior to the diencephalon. So we have a diencephalon here, and now we have the brainstem. So three main components to the brainstem: the midbrain, pons, and medulla, or okay, medulla oblongata. So I think I have like medulla. I mean, for me, it's tomato or tomato. I think when I looked it up on pronunciation guides, and Dr. Merritt also says medulla. So it's medulla, but if you think of Latin and how would the Italians say it? They'll probably say it with a U, but whatever. Just know how it's spelled. So if you hear me say medulla, don't worry about it. Okay, so here we have the diencephalon, and remember it gives birth to all the thalamus, hypothalamus, subthalamus, and epithalamus, and mammillary bodies. But here we have the mesencephalon, metencephalon, and the myelencephalon. Now what derives from there? Well, we have the midbrain, the pons and cerebellum, and the medulla oblongata. So what we have here is midbrain, pons, and medulla. So all of these are the brainstem. Is the cerebellum part of the brainstem? No. So it kind of branches off and does its own, or it's more specialized and it's also branched off. So typically the cerebellum is not considered part of the brainstem, even though it derives from the same thing as the pons. But what I'm getting at here, this is why the diencephalon is not part of the brainstem, because again, the brainstem is derived from these three regions right here, and eventually becomes the three parts of the brainstem. Okay, so back to our brainstem. So it's important not only in relaying info, I mean, it is connecting the cerebrum to the rest of the body and the spinal cord, but it also has vital functions. So this is why the brainstem is very important. So things like cardiac, how your heart beats, and respiratory, how you breathe. So things like your circulation, how your blood pumps, and also your breathing. These are vital functions for living. And then pain sensitivity as well, and alertness and awareness. So all of these are vital functions and things you need in your everyday life. So why do I say location, location? Well, let's take a little detour right here. So thing is that here's boxing, right? Very like or MMA, or if anyone of those sports. So in these contact sports, where can't you punch or kick? Well, you can't punch the back, you can't punch the kidneys, you can't punch below the belt. But where else can't you punch? You can't punch not only in the back, but more specifically in the back of the head. Where do you think your brainstem is located? So again, your brainstem is located in the middle. This is why I kind of say it's kind of like that balloon animal that kind of folded in on itself. So the brainstem is actually protected kind of here, like by all your facial bones, at least from the front. You have your facial bones, you have all your cerebrum right here. So you can technically live without cerebrum. But what if someone punches the back of your head? Well, this is the easier access and less protection come from the posterior and back than you do from the anterior. So this is why if someone gets a blow to the brainstem, they can be easily knocked unconscious or die from trauma to the brainstem. So here we have the midbrain and processes sensory info like vision and hearing. And what else does it do? It also controls reflexes, or not all reflexes, but it's very important in certain types of reflexive signals as well. So we did cover reflexes a few lectures ago, and it's very interesting. So this is part of the midbrain, and what we have is okay, this is not a human brain. It's too small, way too tiny to be a human brain. But what we have here are the corpora quadrigemina. So quad means four. So there are four of these, and corpora just means like it's a Latin term meaning body. So four bodies. But what are these bodies? Well, these are part of the midbrain, and these are involved in. Remember, the midbrain is involved in certain types of reflexes. So these corpora quadrigemina are involved in auditory and visual reflexes. Now here we have a human corpora quadrigemina, or actually human brain. And here, where are the corpora quadrigemina? So there are pairs. There are actually pairs of things we call the superior colliculi. Colliculus is singular. So superior, again, is above. So what are they involved with? Well, they're involved in processing visual stimuli and reactions to visual stimuli. So say you see or see someone fall over in your peripheral vision, or or a bright light flashes somewhere, and what do you typically do? You kind of turn to see what that was that stimuli, what was that sudden movement and visual phenomenon. So this superior colliculi are actually very important in moving your head and eyes toward that sudden stimulus. So things like distraction, this is what's activated by these visual distractions. Or inferior colliculi, see, I don't know if if you lived here in Hawaii, like when an electrical transformer sometimes in your neighborhood sometimes goes off and it sounds like someone put a firework in a trash can or it's a big explosion. So when you hear a loud noise, you might turn and look toward that, right? So their inferior colliculus or inferior colliculi, singular colliculus, these are important for recognizing and causing reflexes to auditory stimuli. So we have here two pairs, so 2 times 2 is 4. That's why they're called collectively the corpora quadrigemina. Now let's go down here to the pons, and the pons processes sensory info. We might talk about the pons a little more when we talk about cranial nerves, but things like hearing, balance, taste, and also controlling facial expressions and movements. And this will make more sense when we get to talk about cranial nerves. In future lecture, we'll talk more about the pons. So here we have our medulla oblongata, whatever. So this controls autonomic function. So autonomic sounds like automatic, right? So these are things, it's not the same thing, but the thing is that autonomic functions, these are functions of your body and brain that you don't actively consciously think about, or you can't really control voluntarily. So you can't say like, hey, I'm gonna stop my heart right now. I mean, you can think it all you want, but your heart's not gonna stop. So things like cardiovascular, again, your heart and all the circulation of blood throughout your body, respiratory, your breathing, and also reflexes as well. So things like your cough reflex, your sneezing, swallowing, all of these things involving kind of like your what we call the GI tract and also your respiratory tract. So all of these, medulla oblongata controls all of these reflexes. So remember how I said that all these PHYL functions are controlled by the brainstem. And again, this is why the brainstem is protected by that cerebrum from the front, protected by all these facial bones. This is why you want to really protect your brainstem, because it controls all of these things you need to live. Now, this is a very interesting study, or actually an interesting case. So Mike the Headless Chicken. So I think the story goes, there was a farmer in Colorado, and he was doing what farmers do, and he was cutting off decapitating chickens. So he noticed that after he decapitated all this chicken was still running around, and even despite not having a head, it still was trying to peck at seeds, even though it didn't realize it didn't have a beak or a mouth anymore. So it's kind of amazing. The beak, face, eyes, and ears were removed, but so the thing is that he left the brainstem intact. So the brainstem was actually still over here. So even though it was missing most of the cerebrum, Mike the Headless Chicken lived for 18 months without all of that part of his brain. So that's why he was able to continue. And I think the way he died, it was kind of sad, because I think they took him on some sort of like traveling sideshow or carnival show, and somewhere along the way, Mike actually choked on something in the middle, and they couldn't actually get the object that was causing him to choke out, and then poor Mike suffocated to death. So, but still amazing, because again, the brainstem was intact, so Mike was still technically alive. And this is a more serious thing, and pretty amazing. So what we have here is Trevor Judge Waltrip, and the amazing thing is that he was born without like a cerebrum. He has brainstem intact. So the interesting thing is that, he actually lived way above the expectation. He had something called hydrocephalus, I believe. And what we have here is that he had all this fluid here instead of a cerebrum, but he still had a brainstem. So when you see what he was able to think about, his cerebral hemispheres were absent, and he just had CSF instead. So the thing is that brainstem, remember, it involves respiration and breathing. He controls the heart, so he still was able to get circulation. And some stimuli, so these are the reflexes we're talking about. So again, this is why the brainstem is very important. And then there was a very interesting case. Actually, let me pull it up. Yeah, so there was an amazing case about a French man who has 90% of his brain not, yeah, he doesn't have 90% of his brain. So he still has his brain stem, but what's even more amazing, unlike poor Trevor, he actually lives a relatively normal life. I think his IQ is 75, so a little bit is below average, but holds on to a job and he's able to, yeah, so look, I think this is an MRI scan. So all of this here, this is all cerebral spinal fluid, and I think this is the remainder of his neurons that form his cerebral cortex here. And I can't see his brainstem, but yeah, he obviously needs a brainstem to keep alive. So considering how much cerebral tissue he's missing, that's pretty amazing. He's able to keep his IQ as is what it is, and he's able to hold down a job. And yeah, he was working as a civil servant, and he married and had 2 children. So it's kind of amazing, and it just shows how important that brainstem is for just living. But the cool thing is, it also shows you that, I mean, just the brain is able to kind of coordinate its neurons, form all these synapses, and wire itself so that this man, despite having a lack of brain mass, is able to live a pretty normal life. So again, the brain is amazing. That's why I love this part of the semester.